Morning everyone, thank you very much. There's just a couple more people coming in. Welcome all to Hensol Castle. Unsure how many of you have actually been here before, but this is our sort of during the crown year part of the resort. So my name is Richard, I'm the Director of Sales here for the hotel and the castle. Obviously what we're trying to do today is obviously not tell you a little bit about the place here and obviously get around and meet everyone. Obviously listen to a fantastic story here that Sophie's going to talk to us about this morning. But on my behalf, look, thanks for coming. Hopefully we'll get around to meet you all. I've got myself, Natalie and Linda here from my team. Hopefully we can just do a bit of networking and chat later. So any questions about here or the place or what we can do, just come and give me a shout. Thanks for coming, and I'll let Mark introduce the...
Good morning, thanks for coming. Nice to see some familiar faces and new faces, so thank you very much. So we work closely with the Vale in partnership, so a lot of our clients use this as a venue, and you can see why. It's a stunning place to come and spend the day. And we've got a good session with Sophie lined up this morning. A very inspirational story. Certainly puts my efforts on both Park and Singleton Park into perspective on the rowing boats there, I should say. And it ties in with much of the work we're doing with our clients at the moment to do with resilience and mental toughness. People always feeling the need to be on 24 hours in work. So I think a lot of the messaging will be very relevant to us in the room today. So with that, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, welcome everybody, as Mark and Richard said. It's lovely to be here again. And I first came across Sophie driving the car on my way to swimming about 10 months ago, and you were talking, Sophie, about your incredible feat, which at that point was about to happen. So Sophie has rowed the Atlantic. Row the Atlantic, everybody. I know. So what we're going to do today is just explore a little bit of your history, because it makes it even more special, because you've all that you've achieved, you've done with quite potentially debilitating illness. So, age 3, so you were diagnosed with 3 months with cystic fibrosis. Tell us a little bit about what cystic fibrosis is and how it can impact on somebody's life.
Yeah, of course. So for those of you who don't know, cystic fibrosis is a genetic health condition, and there is no cure for it. When I was born in 1992, my mum was told that whilst they didn't know what my life expectancy might be, at that time there were very few people still alive with cystic fibrosis by the age of 30. And so cystic fibrosis affects the whole body, but for me it mostly affects my lungs and my digestive system. Essentially the science behind it, and I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to try and give you some science, but how I understand it is that it's a fault with how the body moves salt around the cells. And so what happens is a really thick, sticky mucus is created throughout the body, and for me that affects my lungs and my digestive system the most. And so if you think about that, having lots of mucus in your lungs, it creates a perfect breeding ground for infections. And the more sort of lung infections you get scarring, chronic scarring on the lungs, which is irreversible. So it affects lung function, and there are lots of medications that you can take, but there is no cure for it.
And growing up with potentially debilitating disease, and you talked about the diagnosis in the early days, and it's lovely that you're here and you've done all that you've done. How did it impact your life in terms of what you were able to do, and also the thought process behind your family? I mean, were you cosseted, or were you overly looked after? Were you prevented from doing things, or have you been that sort of independent spirit that always thinks, you know what, I'm going to do it?
So I've been really fortunate that I was brought up by a mum who was able to understand the significance of cystic fibrosis and how important it was that I was looked after well and engaged really well with my healthcare team. but also she was absolutely determined to not let it stop me and to not make me different in a negative way from my peers. And so I've inherited that attitude growing up. But it was instilled in me, and I remember particularly as a teenager when I was being sort of rebelling and not wanting to do my treatments quite as much and was questioning about why I had to do things that were different from my peers. She said to me, she said, look, if you want to do the things you want to do in this life, you have cystic fibrosis and you have no choice but to do your treatments. So you can do all those things, but first has to come your treatments and your healthcare, because if not, you're probably going to be too sick to do the things you want to do. So my mum was quite blunt and directive about that, and I think that's helped because I've taken on sort of quite a practical attitude to cystic fibrosis in some respects, and the way it showed up in my life has changed over the years. So I was, again, I think really fortunate that when I was younger, my CF was fairly stable. I did have to take lots of medication every day and go to regular hospital appointments, but it was only when I was sort of in early adulthood that things started to deteriorate for me. And sort of by my early 20s, I was spending, I think, up to 10 weeks a year in hospital on intravenous, really strong intravenous antibiotics, which is how they treat chest infections and cystic fibrosis. And I was doing up to 2 hours of treatment a day, taking over 30 tablets a day, and my health was still deteriorating slowly. But then, it's coming up about nearly 6 years ago, I got access to a drug trial, which significantly changed my life.
And winding back a little bit, in terms of that, needing to keep healthy, and needing to be as well as you could possibly be to do all the things that you wanted to do. Were you sporty in school?
No.
That's a quick no, wasn't it?
So it's so funny looking back. If you'd have told sort of, I don't know, 13-year-old me that I might have gone on willingly to do something like row across an ocean, I'd have told you to go away. I wasn't remotely interested. I was that person in my teenage years that used to get my mum to write me a note so I didn't have to do PE. I hated it that much. That changed when I was a little bit older as a teenager, and when I did the Duke of Edinburgh's award at school, that's when things changed for me in terms of exercise and adventure.
So, I'm glad you mentioned Duke of Edinburgh. We've got Ian here from the DOE in the audience, which I first met you at an event in the Swansea Stadium. The DOE is all about resilience and being the best that you can be and bringing individuals on and giving those different experiences in life. What did it mean to you, and what did you actually do with your DOE?
So for me, it was my first taste of adventure. So I didn't come from a family that did, adventure really. It wasn't something on my radar. So it was an opportunity to engage in that. And it gave me loads of new experiences. So when I first did Duke of Edinburgh, I did it somewhat unwillingly in my bronze because I had a friend that wanted to do it, and she couldn't possibly do it without a friend. When you're 14 years old, you have to do everything with a friend, don't you? And so she literally dragged me through it, and I remember doing my expedition in Pembrokeshire, which is where I live, and I hated I hated it. My feet hurt so much. I thought like carrying this bag was the worst thing in the world. Oh, it was just terrible experience. But obviously something started to click, and then I sort of got dragged through Silver, Duke of Edinburgh a little bit. And I remember on one of my expeditions on the Preseli Hills in Pembrokeshire, it was throwing it down. It was cold, it was dark, it was miserable. And I was just stomping across these hills crying, saying, oh, this is awful. And one of the Duke of Edinburgh leaders came over and she was like, you're right, this is terrible. But then gold came along, and I actually willingly signed up for gold by that point, and I loved it. And I think with the other aspects in having to do the volunteer and the sport, it started to unlock something in me. I think that I started to realise for the first time that it felt good to do things that were hard and outside of my comfort zone. And I think I started to realise I was capable of more than I thought I was.
Do you think that's we've all got that innate sort of inbuilt opportunity to do those types of things? Do you think, or is it born in you as an individual?
I don't think so.
They're all there.
I think everyone's got that in us. Yeah, I think it's about having the courage, finding the courage, and something unlocking that courage to do something outside of our comfort zone, and to realise that we can sit in the hard. And, do you know what I mean? That we can persevere through hard experiences. I think it's fear that holds people back a lot of the time, and the unknown.
And do you think, I mean, you know, a translatable sort of opportunity to those of us working in the business community is that fear of the unknown sometimes. You know, sometimes we tend to be formulaic in the way in which we do things.
Yeah.
But it's dare to be different, challenge yourself. And you got that through the DV.
That's where it started, yeah, for sure.
And so you've done a DV, and you know, it's set off this ignited this flame of adventure in your mind. You went then to study drama in London.
Yeah.
You did your degree. How did that experience change you?
Oh, that was incredible. I felt like that was when I really started to sort of like grow and become myself, really. And even in making the decision to go to London. So I did my education in Pembrokeshire in West Wales. When I was in sixth form and we were looking at where to go to university, well, I think 80% of those going to university in my sixth form went to Cardiff University. That was the only university they were ever going to go to, because it was the closest to home. It was what people did. And I remember looking on UCAS and thinking, where can I go to university? And I just had this idea, I don't know where it came from, that I wanted to go to London. And I was looking at the different courses that were available. And I remember one of the staff at school, when I said about London, she said something about, oh, you're not frightened about gun crime. So, you know, and I just remember looking at her and saying, oh, this is so ridiculous. I was 17 at the time. And, you know, she created this, she was frightened, so she, and like almost fearful of the unknown, and was, by those conversations, passing that on to her pupils. But by that point, I wasn't afraid. I just knew that I wanted something bigger and something new and something really exciting. So even in going to university in London, making that decision, I was going against the grain, I think, and what was seen as acceptable. And I was okay with that.
And then eventually came back to West Wales.
Yeah, I did. I ended up back in Pembrokeshire.
Yeah.
So I did
At least you've done it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that again, so when I left at 18 to go to London, I remember Mum said to me the same, she said, you told me you were never coming back. I was going to London, that was it. I was going to go and live my life in London. Did my degree, it was absolutely incredible, and I was, you know, it was a fantastic 3 years of my life. And being in London was, without a doubt, quite significant because I had so many new opportunities, and I just, you know, I engaged with the world in such a different way by doing that. But then I made the decision I wanted to come back to Pembrokeshire, and I worked then for a few years, and then I decided I wanted to retrain in a profession, and so I actually then went and did a Masters at Cardiff University for 2 years, and then made my way back to Pembrokeshire. So
I love the phrase that you said, you wanted to engage with the world. Has that been a way in which something has marked your life, you know, engaging with the world? And maybe because of your condition, you know, it's grasping at opportunities, looking for those things which can push you, and making the most of life. I mean, that's something I think which all of us can learn a lot from, in terms of making the most of every day. Yeah,
absolutely. I think for me, it's definitely linked to living with cystic fibrosis and not knowing how long I would live for. And not only how long would I live for, but how long I would be well enough to truly embrace life and do the things I wanted to do. So I've definitely had more of a sense of urgency about that. And because through my different life experiences, I've realised that the world's quite an exciting place. I'm not frightened of it, I'm excited by it. So therefore I wanted to go, well, if I want to travel, I'm going to do it now, I'm going to go now. If I want to do this experience, I'm going to do it now, and I'm going to do it big. So I was sort of grasping at those things, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think then what's happened is, the more I've been able to engage in the world and have new experiences, and it just fuels that even more, because it takes away any fear from that, and you start thinking, well, if there's this amazing experience and I can do that, then there's other amazing experiences, and I can probably do those too.
Let's talk about the amazing experiences. We were chatting about what led you up to your epic journey across the Atlantic. It didn't just start this time last year.
Yeah.
This has been a number of years in the making.
Yeah.
And it's like a screenplay for a film. I mean, I want to be the screenwriter on this on this film because it's phenomenal. Because 7 or so years ago, you saw on the Banff Film Festival somebody who had rowed across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Tell us about how it all happened and how you became so enamoured with the opportunity.
So I think it's been about 8 years ago. I went to the Banff Mountain Film Festival, and there was a film about a team of 4 women who are from Yorkshire who rowed across the Atlantic. And it was an incredible film, and the reason I thought it was incredible is because they were really, how I would say, sort of really normal women. They were mothers, they weren't from a sporting background at all, and they had this incredible story of how they ended up in this ocean rowing crew, and they went on, and everyone laughed at them, and everyone said, oh, don't so ridiculous, you can't do this, and they all had husbands and children, and in the film, the husbands sort of, oh, I don't, just let them get on with it, I go, okay. But you could tell that even they sort of were doubting maybe what they were trying to do. Anyway, they were successful, they arrived into the Caribbean having rowed an ocean. So I saw this film, and it really stuck with me. At the time, I was living in Cardiff, doing my social work degree, and I said to myself after that, I really just want to join a rowing team. I had no desire at that point to row an ocean. So it wasn't as simple as that, but it made me want to join a rowing crew. So when I moved back to Pembrokeshire, I literally lived a couple of 100 metres from a rowing team, which is amazing. So I joined this rowing club, and I fell in love with rowing. At the time, my health was deteriorating, and so I was engaging with it as much as I could, but there was some maybe limitations to that. Then I got the drug trial, and my health literally overnight changed for the better, and gave me a level of health that I never thought I was going to have. And then a couple of years later, there was a crew of women locally who were putting together an ocean rowing crew. And they put a call out for their 4th rower. Because my health was much better, and I sort of fallen in love with rowing, etc., by this point. I saw that, and something sparked in me, and I thought, maybe I could do that. Maybe. So I got in touch with them, and I said, oh, I'm interested in being your 4th rower. They didn't pick me, which is fine. But what happened was somebody else in my rowing team, who was a friend in my rowing crew, who was a friend of mine, I didn't know at the time, had also expressed interest in being the 4th rower. This crew put the people who had expressed interest, who didn't get the position, in touch with each other in case they wanted to create their own ocean rowing team. Then Janine, who I went on to row an ocean with, she said to me one day in the rowing club, oh, Sophie, do you want to row across the Atlantic? And I said, yeah. And that was, I think that was about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago now. So that was the start of that.
And how much training is involved in doing that?
Oh, so much.
And so just outline the routine for us that you have to do to be able to prepare yourself.
So I think when people think about rowing an ocean, what they think about is the act of rowing, and that being the most important thing. They think like you're sitting on a rowing machine in the gym for hours on end. I did do that, but actually that was like just a side part of the training. The most important training was turning ourselves into ocean rowers. That we hadn't rowed an ocean until we rowed an ocean. You know, you can't get those conditions unless you're out in the middle of an ocean. So there's only so much you can do, but we had to learn the skills required. We had to do, because we took part in an event called the Atlantic Dash, there's various requirements you have to do for them to allow you to take part in their event for safety reasons. So we had to do various courses like navigation, sea survival, our radio courses, first aid at sea. So we had to do all of those and really be able to use those skills. We had to learn about managing boat electrics, what to do in really difficult weather. We had to know everything about that boat. So if for instance we had a marlin attack, which is a thing in ocean rowing, fortunately we didn't, and they pierced the hull of boats, we had to be able to fix the boat in the middle of an ocean. So we had to train in all these skills, as well as getting ourselves physically prepared. And for me, living with cystic fibrosis, there was also that. So at that time, nobody with cystic fibrosis had ever rowed an ocean before. So I had to work really closely with my CF care team to sort of train in how I was going to manage cystic fibrosis on the boat. So I have to do daily nebulizer treatments. That nebulizer had to come on the boat with me. I still have to take about 20 tablets a day. Those medications had to come on the boat, and we had to train and come up with a plan around what was going to happen if I was going to get ill in the middle of an ocean, if I was going to get a really bad chest infection, what were we going to do? So we had to do all these things, but on top of that, I also do physical training. And yeah, so I'd be in the gym sort of 6 days a week, doing various things on row machines, etc.
How long every day?
It would depend, an hour, 2 hours, something like that. But I got really used to like sitting on a row machine for 2 hours at a time, staring at the wall. That became really normal.
I think I can sit on a chair looking at the rowing machine. I think that's it. But also in the training, physical training, and also that training to actually repair and things. Marlin attack, who knew? You also have to search, your inner depths of your own personality to get on with 4 people for that amount of time. And we'll come on to the stats later on, a little bit later. But how do you summon that emotional intelligence, or call upon your emotional intelligence to get on with each other for that amount of time? You've got to be a nice person, obviously.
Yeah, and it's hard. That was really tricky, and we knew going into the row that was going to probably be one of the hardest things. Our boat was 10 metres long and less than 2 metres wide, and there were 4 of us on that boat for 53 days. It's a really long time in a really small environment, and there's no privacy. You can't. I always say that you can't hide physically or emotionally from each other. So we were really fortunate that we had the opportunity to work with a guy called John Peck, who runs an organisation called Tiger Teams, and he became a mentor to us.
Right.
And he's an adventurer himself and previously rowed an ocean. But he put us through various sort of psychological testings. So we did our CME profiles so that we could understand ourselves a bit better, and also understand our crew, so then we could understand by understanding ourselves and each other, we could understand how we might work together as a team, what might be the things we're really good at, and also what might be the things that we're going to have to work really hard at. And we also did our risk appetite profiles as well, so we all understood our own and each other's approach to risk, because obviously what we were doing was risky, and that was incredibly helpful. And I think because getting to the start line was so tough that we had to raise about £150,000, and whilst also doing all the training we had to do, physical and also practical with getting ready. Alongside, apart from Janine, who is retired, the 3 of us were all working full-time jobs as well, alongside doing all of that. So we were under an immense amount of pressure, and so we saw the teamwork started before we got to the ocean, if that makes sense. We understood each other before we even got to the ocean, and that was incredibly helpful while we were out there.
And did you assume types of roles amongst the 4 of you?
Yeah.
Like the sort of the mother, the sister, the confessor? Did you?
Yeah, we
Which
did.
role did you?
So I was a social secretary.
So,
Honestly, you would even. I actually went out there with a calendar of social events for our ocean row. So what we knew was that before we went, we sort of created a few things. Like what were our shared values as a team, and what was our approach to this? Because you could go out there, some teams go out there and they are competitive. They're getting there, they want a speed record, across the ocean. So we had to work, what was the point? What were we doing this for? We had to understand that about ourselves and each other. So for us, we had a couple of shared things which helped. So we wanted, first and foremost, we wanted to make it to Antigua safely. That was our first thing. Yeah? So it was about safety, it wasn't about speed. Okay? We wanted to get there as friends, and also we wanted to try and have some fun along the way. We didn't care, within reason, right? We didn't care how long it took us to get there. We weren't there for a speed record, So we need, if to stay as part of a team and to get on and to all feel like there was some level of enjoyment out of doing it, we need to stop rowing and rest a little bit, and that's what we do. Whereas if you were competitive about it, that wasn't happening, you were rowing whatever, you know, for example. So that really helped us stay sort of connected and together as a team. So my role was very sort of quite important in that. And we had these different social events, and I brought sort of fun things on board. I also brought things to like lift us when it got tough and to keep us going. So we had this amazing box of letters from people back home, and we had at least one to open as a team every single day, and they were really important to us, especially on the really tough days. And then also from a sort of practical thing, we all had to know about how that boat worked and sort of generally speaking as well. So I was part of that, and it was a role that I wasn't planning to have, but after receiving a call, so we left Lanzarote, and within 2 hours of being on the water, we were still in mobile signal by this point, I get a call, and I wasn't rowing at that point. Why is the event organiser phoning me? I answered the phone to, he's called Billy, and he just said, Sophie, where are you going? Where are you going? I said, well, we're heading out. And he went, you're going to hit land, you're going to hit land. What? He said, you're on a direct collision course to Fulfilment shore. If you don't move in the direction of the boat, you're going to hit straight as land. Oh. So I got into the cabin with all the navigation equipment, and honestly, that was the most intense hour of my life to that point. And I was a navigation expert after that hour, I can tell you. And I was shouting at the hatch to the girls, I was like, row harder, keep rowing, row harder. Because we had to get, so that became a skill. Very quickly learned skill. As we discovered, we thought we knew how to use our navigation equipment. We didn't. Really. And
I mean, all those years preparing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm really interested in the shared values, you know, and those three, you know, we've got to have fun, we've got to finish as friends, and we've got to get there. Speed's not the essence, but those shared values, those in business can learn a lot from that, surely. It's having a purpose, and I think it's something that the guys at Call of the Wild will really look at when, you know, talking to businesses. That's crucial, because if you're all on a different course, you won't end up getting there.
Yeah, exactly.
So a few facts, and I don't know when we got some snaps when I'm going through the facts. No, this is the first time. So some facts, while the photographs up there. 3,200 miles. You left on the 1st of Feb. Took you how many days?
53 days, 12 hours and 1 minute.
1 minute. It's that 1 minute. Rowing for how many hours a day?
So it depends on the day and the weather, but it was about 10 hours per person each day.
And you kicked off at Lanzarote via Fuerteventura.
Really.
And then ended up in
Antigua.
And tell us a little bit about that journey. I mean, I wanted to be able to tell me that you saw whales, humpback whales, and giant squid, and sea monsters, and marlin schools, and everything. And what did you see?
I saw one dolphin the whole way. That is my only disappointment of that whole journey, was not seeing the wildlife. And because we took part in an event called the Atlantic Dash, there were other boats in the fleet, so there were 4 boats in the fleet, and the other 3 crews saw everything. And I don't know what it was about. And even, so we used to have daily calls via the satellite phone with Billy, who runs Atlantic Dash as our safety officer, just to check we were all okay. And he used to say every day, have you seen anything yet, girls? Have you seen anything? I said, no, Billy, the ocean's taking the piss out of us, quite honestly. And he said that he was on a video call with one of the other crews, and even he said, I'm seeing more than you, because he was on a video call, and a whale jumped up in the background as a video call. So I don't know.
But you know, the whole experience. You know, how would you sum up that level of intensity with your friends? What mark does it leave on you as an individual?
it's hard to sum up really. It was absolutely incredible. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, physically and mentally, mostly mentally. It was incredibly intense. And it was deeply uncomfortable, physically and mentally as well. Honestly, that boat, you might assume rowing an ocean might be somewhat uncomfortable, until you're doing it, you have no idea. Honestly, like, there's nowhere, there was nowhere comfortable to sit even. You're constantly getting thrown around at all times. Yeah, so it was.
Is this one of the fun nights out? Is this one?
Yeah. No, that was the arrival into Antigua.
Yeah.
That was the moment. But it was worth everything because also out there, I mean, we got to experience things that most people will never ever get to experience. Being in the middle of an ocean,
Yeah.
who's got nothing around you, you wouldn't see anything. Seeing nature uninterrupted was unbelievable. I've never seen, like, the moon rises, like, absolutely incredible. And there was this one night, I think there was a photograph of it, of this photo actually. The ocean was completely flat. There was nothing else around us. And the bioluminescence in the water was, I've just never experienced anything like it. So as we were putting the oars through, there was like sparkles flying everywhere. And so, so the toilet situation, it was a bucket. And so that night, so you'd scoop some water into the bucket, and as you're doing it, was actually scooping up sparkles into the bucket. So that's why I'm shouting to everyone about that. And so me and Polly were rowing along, experiencing that, and then suddenly we had this incredible moonrise that just happened. This bright orange moon just rose, and it just that's really hard to put into words, like what that felt like. It just felt like such a privilege to get to witness that. And I think also, like I've spoken to the girls about this since, there was just this sense the whole row, even when it was really tough, that we were achieving something really epic.
Yeah.
And I felt the whole time that we were really pushing that experience of being human. And to me, that was so fulfilling to feel like I'm doing it. And it was, the campaign ran and the teamwork ran for 3 years leading up to the start line. And so for 3 years, you keep going and you find some deep sort of inner motivation to keep going through all of that. But the whole time, you're still not doing the thing.
Yeah.
So as soon as we left Lanzarote, even though we thought, what we had no idea at that point what actually lay ahead and what the journey was going to be like, every hard thing we encountered along the way, sort of, it was made easy by the fact we were actually doing the thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you sort of, that motivation was just there. You could just do it because it's sort of, even though this is incredibly tough, like we're doing it and we're going to get to Antigua.
And did you want it to end?
So, we were desperate for it to end. But on one hand, so on one hand, because I think psychologically we knew we were getting there. So once we were sort of 500 miles from Antigua, we just wanted to be there. And what happened was the weather changed, and about 500 miles from Antigua, which should be about a week out from Antigua, we hit headwinds. And you cannot, because the boat's really big, you can't row the boat into headwinds. And that was really tough. So we had something that's called a power anchor. It's like a big parachute on a really long bit of line. Like the rope is like 100 meters long. And what that does is, if you need to, you can put that out and it acts as an anchor, so it'll just stop you.
Yeah.
Because what was happening is, because we couldn't row into the headwinds, they were pushing us away from Antigua. Which is like soul destroying at that point. So we had to put the power anchor out and just sit in, and we were in like 39-degree heat in the middle of the day. That was incredibly tough. And because we were then being delayed, a lot of our friends and family who were coming out to Antigua to meet us were sat in Antigua having a lovely holiday. And we were sat feeling so far from land, So in one respect, we were desperate to get there. Because we were so close yet we're so far. And we were exhausted, we were physically exhausted by that point. Our body was starting to deteriorate.
The energy, the calories that you must have expended, it must have been phenomenal.
Yeah.
You probably have to eat as much as I do, just as
we were having to, we didn't eat as much as we planned to eat, so we'd taken on the boat about 6,000 calories per person per day.
Yeah.
I think we managed to probably eat up to about 4,000 calories a day on a good day, which wasn't too, that was okay, but we were all losing weight, and we just, the aches and the pains, and it's incredibly tough on the body. So on one hand we wanted it to end, but on the other hand we just knew that we would miss it, and I do. Nearly a year on, I miss everything about it.
I'm keen to open to our friends in the audience if they've got any questions. They're all looking mesmerised. Okay, there's three. Right, first of all, I'm going to go you first, and then you, and then Beast. Okay, gentleman in white.
Yeah. Did you ever jump off when I was swimming?
Yeah, he did, yeah. And funny enough, that was scarier to me than pushing off from Lanzarote. I was terrified. And getting on and off the boat, that was one of the things we had to practice. It's actually really difficult because the boat sits quite high out the waterline. And I was saying, I don't know if I can do it, We had to wait till we had quite flat conditions. And Maya, one of the crewmates, the youngest girl on the boat, when she heard me say that, she gave me a bit of a pep talk. She said, Sophie, you are not rowing across an ocean and getting to the other side and not jumping in that water. You are getting in, even if I have to push you. So she did. She got me in the water, and it was unbelievable. And believe it or not, the water, so we swam near sort of the middle, so we were literally in the middle of an ocean. So I think the ocean is about 3 miles deep at that point. But the water was 27 degrees in temperature. Amazing.
Wow, it's incredible. Ben, and then
Someone else from the best county in Wales could see the temperature flying on the boat. But I was, and may well be you come to it, but it's, how did you find the sort of decompression afterwards? After that elation, after that achievement, how did you find that readjustment, immediate readjustment from once you landed?
It was really tricky. So when we got to Antigua, we had the most incredible reaction and response, and we were really fortunate that some of our friends and family could come out there. And because we were part of the event, we were the last boat in the fleet to arrive, which was actually incredible because we were all back together when we got to be the ones to bring the community back together. We were all actually staying in the same hotel, and we were all in Antigua for about a week afterwards. So we had this incredible week, living in like this ocean rowing bubble, thinking, reminiscing and hearing about the others' experience, our friends and family, and it was just a complete celebration for a week, whilst our bodies readjusted, which was really difficult. And then we all went home, and it was like, back with a bit of a bang, really. It was really tricky. The recovery was hard, the physical recovery. I think it took me about a month to feel physically normal again. And then I had to go back to my day job, and that was really surreal. Sort of, you've done this big epic thing, you go back to your day job when nothing's changed. And people are really interested in what you've done, but no one really understands what you've done apart from the girls that I was on the boat with. So I think, again, nearly a year on, it still feels a bit tricky, sort of, because I think before going, the idea of rowing an ocean, although I was going to do it and I had I thought I could do it, I didn't actually know if I was going to be able to do it. And so the thought of arriving into Antigua on our tiny little ocean rowing boat was so far from my experience at that point. I never really had the chance to think about what life might be like if we did achieve it, if that makes sense. And so I thought that if I was able to do that, then wouldn't that answer so many questions I had about being a human, and wouldn't it give me such a sense of fulfilment that would just keep you going? And that's not what happens at all. You row an ocean, and all you've done is row an ocean. If that makes sense. It doesn't answer all your questions about what it is to be human, and it doesn't actually give you a sense of fulfilment. All it's done is make me go, well, if I could do that, what else could I do?
The next ocean will come on to that.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, thank you for sharing your experience, and congratulations on the achievement. I want to ask you from a different point of view. So it's quite close to me, cystic fibrosis. I'm a gene carrier. Doesn't really mean much, but it can.
Yeah.
So I got 3 girls. I went to IVF. The first one we had to go through a scare. And obviously something was abnormal in the bloods, and so we had to go through a salt test and etc. Looking at Google, probably the worst thing you could do, seeing how it can affect you, and that could have changed our lives, you know, me and my wife. But we went through another, so she's a gene carrier, not affected, so we thought we'll go again, obviously, and we'll risk it, 25% chance of being diagnosed. And then we had a miracle then, not IVF, thinking, well, it does work, obviously something's going right. But then she wasn't affected either. So my question is, how did it affect your parents? So that could have really changed my life. So what support did they get? You know, how do they sort of experience that journey?
I think it's really tricky, isn't it? Because I can't speak on behalf of my parents, but obviously I've spoken to them about it over the years, and especially now I speak publicly about living with cystic fibrosis, and that has become sort of a separate passion of mine. So I've entered into those conversations with them. But my mum has told me that when she found out that I had cystic fibrosis, she said it was absolutely devastating. She was devastating. She said, you know, your child's born and you've got all these hopes for your child's future. And also for context, I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, and nobody else, none of my siblings have got cystic fibrosis, so our family's a perfect ratio in terms of the 25% chance. So they didn't know anything about cystic fibrosis. You know, now there's a lot more information and about it, but in the sort of early 90s, people didn't know about it so much. So she's absolutely devastating and incredibly hard. But I guess, you know, they were faced with I had cystic fibrosis and that was it, we couldn't change that. But what they could do is they didn't have a choice about me having cystic fibrosis, but they did have a choice about how they parented me and how they looked after me to give me the best opportunity, you know. And I think I've learned directly from that, and I say to people all the time, I say, I don't have a choice about whether I live with whether I have cystic fibrosis, but I do have a choice about how I live with it. And that came directly from their parenting. But I think it's been really tricky, and I think in a lot of ways, I think it's harder for them to see their daughter live with something like cystic fibrosis and all the challenges of it than it is for me in a lot of ways, because I know I'm all right. Do you know what I mean? And I know that I've got the resilience to go on this journey, and ultimately there's only so many things I can control about it. So I think it's harder for them to sort of stand by and watch me go through those experiences. But I think what's really nice is, so I still sometimes do have to go into hospital for intravenous antibiotics, but I'm looked after by the CF care team in Llandoch Hospital in Cardiff, and they're absolutely phenomenal. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been able to go and row an ocean. And my mum, you know, always finds it really tricky if I ever have to go into hospital, and she finds out very, you know, she has quite an emotional response to that even to this day. But she, in seeing me there and seeing how sort of the close relationships I've got with my CF care team, she once came and visited me, and she came and she said to me, she said, "You're all right here, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, I am, Mum." And I think that was so reassuring to her to see how much care I receive from them, which is absolutely incredible. And then, you know, so she's gone through that journey, and then I tell her I'm going to go row an ocean. Horrified by that thought. But now she's like my biggest supporter, and she's in that photograph actually. And I said to her, I said, if I'm going to row an ocean, Mum, you are going to be stood there on the shore in Antigua to greet me. And she was. And she was stood there, and she was like the proudest parent ever.
It's a super question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
My question is going to be very similar, because you mentioned at the very start of your presentation was here. It was about your mum treating like normal child make a difference. I've got 2 daughters, and being a parent, you never know if you're doing a good job or a bad job. You never know what the outcome was going to be. And obviously with yourself, the fear and panic that your mum would have had throughout your career that she would have hid from you, which is amazing. I just wanted to know what it meant to your mum when you're doing it, but also that moment that she would have hugged you, embraced you at the end. How did that feel? Because I think for your mum, and you've done all the work, all the training, but I think it would have meant that little bit extra for your mum, almost a bit of reassurance for her. I want to just delve in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. So it's a shame I haven't given it to Beck to put up. I've got this incredible video. So my uncle also came out, and so this is me and my mum. I literally just stepped off the boat, And there's this incredible video I've got of me hobbling off, literally I couldn't walk, hobbling off the boat straight to my mum, giving her a hug, and I burst into tears, and I said, oh Mum, I made it back. And she hugged me, and she said to me, she said, what are you crying for? What are you crying for? It's so overwhelming, it's so overwhelming. And she said, but you're here. And I think, so even though she'd been through all of that journey, and only now has it really been shared with me how hard it was for the people we left at home, dot watching, like tracking us every day. You know, think, are they actually okay? Are they okay? What's going on out there? And there's just every now and again phoning through, oh, this is amazing, or this is really hard, you know. She shields me from that, and even when I arrived in Antigua, she had this sign of strength that she shared with me, so I was having this massive emotional reaction. There's no doubt in my mind that, well, I know now, that when we were going across, she was incredibly worried about me, but she still managed to hold that. Do you know, when I made it to land, and she was like, this is about you, like, this is your moment. So yeah, I think there was a huge sense of relief. But she was able to, she's always had this way where she can, you know, make space for her own emotions, and shield me somewhat from them to a certain extent. But yeah, it was the most incredible feeling in the world, making it back to land, and really special to have my mum there, especially with my journey, the journey of her being my parent, you know, and looking after me with cystic fibrosis. But it's interesting because she shared with other people. She says, oh, my biggest worry is what is she going to do next? That's what she says to people.
That's a good DJ.
Yeah. And so my mum has always been my biggest supporter throughout all of my journey, whether it's in my care, with my health, or whether it's with my sort of like my adventures or whatever. But at the same time, she's so anxious about it, you know. But and I often tell her, so well, you taught me that CF didn't have to hold me back, so this is your fault, Mum.
And so good link into what is next. What's the next part of the plan?
So it's very, very, like, such early days, but Polly, one of my crew, she's here actually, this is Polly, me, Polly, and the two unknown people at this stage, have this plan to become the first crew of women to row across the Arctic Ocean. Yeah.
Just pause a minute. I can take that in. Yeah, which is going to be incredible. And so it's early stages.
Very early stages. We've been doing some research. We've been having some meetings, with some people, that are Arctic explorers, etc. I've spoken to some people who have done the row. So it's been done before, just not by a crew of women. So it was done in the summer. And a woman was part of a crew. So a lady, Hannah, she has got the record of being the first woman to do an Arctic row, but she was alongside 3 men. So we've spoken to her as well. But yes, it's very early days, because it wouldn't be part of an event like the Atlantic Dash. This would be an independent row. So it's a very different approach to it.
But we're going to watch out for this big time. And we hope we keep in touch, and we can learn about the progress. You mentioned the Atlantic Dash, and I thought stupidly that it was a dash across the Atlantic. But explain why the actual row was called the Atlantic Dash, because I think it will resonate with our audience.
So the Atlantic Dash got its name from a poem called The Dash, and the poem talks about how at the end of our lives we have a gravestone, and it says from date, it has a date, it has another date, and then it has this little dash in the middle. And so the poem talks about how the dates are irrelevant, what matters is what you do with your dash. And so the Atlantic Dash event is about giving people an opportunity to do something really epic with their little dash, so their time in this world. And their ethos is about encouraging people who are, maybe we might want to call them normal, average, everyday people, deciding to do something really epic and to make the most of their little dash that they have.
Sophie, Good place to end. The only place to end. There are teas and coffees in the other room?
Yeah, back in there now.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.